Welcome back to Made in Carolina. I'm your host, Lolita Rowe. In episode 1, we explored the land before the lake, the farms, churches, and communities that once thrived in the Saluda River Valley. In episode 2, we turned to the creation of Lake Murray itself. This is a story of engineering marvels, political ambition, displacement, and resilience. The building of the dam reshaped the land and forever changed the lives of those who called it home. The story of how Lake Murray came to be began not with bulldozers, but with visionaries. One of the first was Gabriel Alexander Guignard, a Columbia businessman and owner of the Guignard Brickworks. In the early 1900s, Guignard recognized the power hidden in South Carolina's rivers and secured early dam charters along the Saluda. Though he never built a dam himself, he was among the first to imagine how hydroelectric energy could fuel the state's growth. 2 decades later, the idea resurfaced. In 1904, Guignard helped incorporate the Lexington Water Power Company, which acquired flowage rights on the Saluda River. Years later, T.C. Williams of the Columbia Railway and Navigation Company and engineer William S. Murray revived that dream, envisioning a massive storage basin on drill shoals to power Columbia's growing textile industry and feed the planned Santee Canal hydroelectric system, a project described as second only to Muscle Shoals in Alabama. According to the Dispatch News dated May 19, 1926, Murray traveled from New York to finalize key agreements while Williams publicly declared that construction would only move forward if land could be purchased at a reasonable price. To understand how these early decisions came together and why this stretch of the Saluda was chosen, I spoke again with historian J.R. Fennell, who has spent years studying Lake Murray's history and the communities forever changed by its creation. When we spoke, I learned that the story of the Drill Shoals Dam began with Place, the Pull of Columbia just down the road, and the vision of G.A. Guignard and engineer William S. Murray, who turned an idea for hydroelectric power into the blueprint for what would become Lake Murray. Why was this area the one that had to be made into a dam?
I think a couple of reasons. Number one, I think the proximity to Columbia. So Columbia, of course, was a growing city, and you had a lot of homes that were being electrified. And one thing that really was drawing a lot of electricity were some of the textile mills that were popping up. So, of course, a lot of textile mills moved south after the Civil War. So Columbia had, many textile mills in the late 19th century. And so they needed a lot of power and sometimes could not provide their own.
Why was hydroelectric power the power of choice? Is it because of the rivers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're exactly right. That's something I should have said too. Yeah, you have got these rivers that, they have a lot of, there's a kind of height discrepancy, so there's a lot of fall, a lot of power that could be generated, and so you had these rivers that would be perfect for generating hydroelectric power, and that was a easy, and once of course the dams are built, you didn't have to really do anything to generate power. You didn't have to burn coal or whatever it was. And so it was kind of easy after that. But so the proximity to Columbia, and then you had you had an early visionary, I guess, named G.A. Guignard, and he started the Lexington Water Power Company, and he kind of had an idea for starting or creating a dam. And so he purchased the rights to build a dam on the Saluda and on Bear Creek, but never really, kind of got around to doing anything. And then William S. Murray, who was a New York engineer, he owned a company called Murray and Flood, which you can't get any better when it comes to people who build names for that. What a name, but
it really is like good marketing too. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So he purchased the rights to build a dam on the Saluda, and saw that I guess he looked at a topographic map and he saw that if you were to build a dam of a certain height at that Dreher Shoals site, that the dam would not have to be, it would have to be large, but it, not impossibly large. And that if you build it at a certain height, the water would go up to the 360-foot mark. And at that level, you would not have to move. You'd have to move people, but there were no cities. There were no railroad lines. And of course, that was hugely important at that time when railroad was king. It would just be able to provide so much power. And so that's kind of what he decided to do, was to pursue that, and was able to get, partner with the Barstow Company that was here in South Carolina that, that owned some land around there as well. And of course, they kind of led the construction of it. But really, it had to do with those three things: the river, and the possibility to power there, the proximity to Columbia, and then that kind of perfect 360-foot mark for the water level.
And so, what about the political factors that influence the decision to build the dam here instead of somewhere else?
I think it. I think it just had to do with, I guess, the federal government was on board. They provided a license, and I think the I don't think there was much opposition from any governments or anything that I've been able to find. And I think that, there was such demand from, some of these textile companies. And of course, I think they held a lot of sway. And there was I think just a general idea in the 20s of, go, go, go. We need to build for prosperity, and really need to help kind of drive economic growth. And so I think, there was no real kind of opposition to the building of the dam from any kind of government, that is.
JR captures how proximity, politics, and power all converged. Columbia's textile mills needed cheap electricity. Guignard saw that potential early on, and Murray, with the resources and reach, turned it into reality. In 1927, the Lexington Water Power Company began work on the Saluda Dam. At the time, it was the largest earthen dam in the world, stretching 1.5 miles long and 200 feet high. Thousands of men came from across South Carolina, from across the country. African American laborers, immigrants, and crews hired through private contractors whose hands moved the earth, laid the rail lines, and built the foundation for what would become Lake Murray.
This is the Saluda River hydroelectric development near Columbia, South Carolina. This will be the largest earthen power dam in the world, being 1.5 miles long, 208 feet high, and containing 11 million cubic yards of dirt. The dam will create the largest artificial lake in the world, being 76 square miles in area, 41 miles long, and 14 miles wide at the widest place. It will have a shoreline 510 miles long and contain 825 billion gallons of water. 300,000 horsepower can be developed. Over $20 million is being spent on the project.
This is an opportunity for each of you to see one of the many developments now going on in the South, particularly in South Carolina. We cordially invite you to visit our state and see this mammoth project, power project, the largest of its kind in the world, and give us the chance to show you, along with our great industrial strides and development, real, genuine hospitality. Projects of this nature have played a prominent part in helping the South develop its rich store of natural resources. This is an opportunity for each of you to see one of the many developments now going on in the South, particularly in South Carolina. We cordially invite you to visit our state and see this mammoth power project, the largest of its kind in the world, and give us a chance to show you, along with our great strides in industrial development, real, genuine Southern hospitality. Projects of this nature have played a prominent part in helping the South develop its rich store of natural resources.
That was a clip from a 1929 newsreel about the making of Lake Murray, capturing the cost of the project, remarks from then-Governor John Richards, and even the voices of the Gandy dancers who built the rail lines for the dam. Among the thousands who worked on the dam, not everyone made it home. Records mention men who were injured or killed on the job. One of them was Ira Wilson, a 38-year-old car repairman originally from Russellville, Alabama. While working beneath a dump car near the dam site, a co-worker did not see him, and a chain was released from the opposite side, and the steel body of the car fell on his back. He died soon after at Baptist Hospital, leaving behind his wife and 2 children. Stories like Ira Wilson's reminds us that behind every measure of progress are human lives. Men who took risk in dangerous, uncertain work, often far from home. And then there are the Gandy dancers, the railroad crews whose chants and songs kept rhythm as they laid track and swung hammers. Their music turned exhaustion into endurance, and in recordings from the era, you can still hear their call and response echoing through the work sites. In the South, most were black, often working under segregated and dangerous conditions. In the West, similar crews included Chinese and Native American workers. In the Northeast, Italians and Eastern Europeans, and Irish laborers in many areas. In the Southwest, Mexican and Mexican-American workers were known by another name, taqueros. This clip doesn't just capture the excitement of progress, it reminds us who built the lake and how their songs transformed exhaustion into endurance. As the waters rose, entire communities were uprooted. More than 5,000 people were displaced, their homes, churches, and farms lost beneath the new lake. Some families were offered as little as $13 to $15 an acre for their land. For many, it wasn't enough to start again.
Interview with Ralph Wessinger, May the 18th, 1979. All right, Ralph, will you tell me where you were born and where you're from?
From the Chapin, out from Chapin, off to the old Lexington Highway next to St. Thomas Lutheran Church.
How old were you when Lake Murray Dam started and was completed?
They started in 1927, wasn't it? And I was born in 1919.
Okay, what do you remember about the building of the dam? What was your most vivid impression about the building?
Well, they told us they was going to back water all over the place, and we'd have to move out, and of course, Daddy was slow about moving. He didn't want to leave the old place, and then all of a sudden we woke up there one day and they backing the water up, and the fields back on the river would look like the trees that was left down there that wasn't covered up looked like potato banks, and lo and behold, we realized we had to get out in a hurry.
Ralph Wessinger remembered the sounds and sights watching his father's land disappear beneath the lake. He recalled the steel bridge, the lumber saws, and the railroad that cut the valley to carry away timber and tools. Some families felt they had no choice but to sell.
Do you know who approached him about the conveyance?
You mean the sale of the property?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all right.
Aldria.
Yeah,
A-U-L-L?
What, ma'am?
How you spell his first name?
O-L-I. Oliver Drare. Well,
Oliver.
Yeah, well, they call him Oliver.
Where was he from?
He was from the, down in that section around St. Michael's, the Blue Church.
So he was a local person.
Yeah, and they had another salesman too, but Mr. Drare is the one who contacted my granddaddy and my daddy about it. But they had another one, Alfred Wayne.
C.A. Wayne.
Yeah, C.A. Wayne.
Yeah,
he was
right.
another fellow that went around about
Blues man there.
Do you know how they set this up? Because Mrs. Henry, Miss Louise Henry, told me that Alfred Winger approached her, and yet all the deeds have as the agent of the power company, T.C. Williams.
But
And I was under the impression he was the one that actually
Well,
approached people.
T.C. Williams, that was the main man, but he's the big wheel, you might say. But they had these local people to contact the local people, figured they could finagle them easier than the T.C. Williams could. And originally it was a Murray. Murray was the man's name. That's the reason they named it Lake Murray.
But Mr. Williams stayed in the office. He didn't get out.
But it was local people who approached their neighbors in most cases.
You had to go down. In other words, the building's on the corner of Washington and Main Streets.
He was working with the bank. I've got that.
Yeah, that's where you had to go.
What did he offer your family, an acre?
I don't know what he offered to start with, but I think they wound up at $40 a nickel, wasn't it?
No, we got $50. It was, I don't know what they offered either, but my granddaddy and my daddy didn't sell out right away. They were among the last
They
two.
were some of the holdouts.
Yeah, they didn't jump right out. Now my granddaddy Bickley sold his, and he sold pretty quick, and he didn't get 40.
Well, I understand the going rate to begin with was $15 an acre.
Well, I'll tell you how this thing worked out now. Of course, I don't know, I may be saying the wrong thing, but see what happened. Now, they came around before this thing got started, before anybody knew anything about it, and they took option on a lot of these people's land, came around, just took option, $5 an acre, and nothing ever happened, you see. And so it went on there for 3 or 4 years, and they came back and done the same thing. See, they was using strategy on the people, and they started taking options, for little money. People said, well, they done it before, didn't amount to nothing. We'll just take it. We'll take it this time, And then when they got an option on a bunch of it, then they began to leak out what they wanted it for, and see, they done got possession of a lot of it, and so they started working from there.
Well, when the neighbors came by the first time, did they tell you what the project was all about? That there was going to be this great hydroelectric
No,
thing?
they didn't mention anything yet.
Just ask if you wanted to sell.
Yeah, you want to sell, we'll give you an option on it. In other words, they could come around with some little problem. And back then, money was hard, and people, they thought $5 option on a place for $5 an acre, that was something.
Well, that was a tough decade.
Yeah.
The boll weevil had hit in the early 20s.
That's right.
And then about the time the dam was being built, the banks failed, and people were really having a struggle.
That's right.
For others, the anger and loss ran so deep they left the state entirely. Others left for opportunity.
Do you know, or do we know how many families were displaced, and did they respond well to being relocated as this progressive change was happening?
So it was about 5,000 people that had to be relocated. And not all of them were, happy about it, as you can imagine. I mean, they, in some cases, were being moved off the land that their families had owned since, the 1740s and 50s. So they didn't want to move. These families received, from my research, it looks like between $13 and $15 an acre. At that time, in that money. I'm not sure if everybody thought that was a fair price. There were people that sued and in some cases successfully sued so that they still retain ownership of the lake bed. So that's something that a lot of people don't know about. And there was also I think a lot of these people, some of these people were so angry and felt like maybe they had no other choice, but they were either did or considered leaving the state. And it seems like that state legislatures were worried about this because I think Georgia, the state of Georgia, took out an advertisement in the newspaper, state newspaper, saying that, hey, if you were kicked off your land, come to Georgia. We'll even provide free transportation for you. So,
even the state worried that so many people leaving would hurt the local economy, but the project continued, and by 1930, the dam stood complete, a symbol of modernism and loss all at once. To understand how this vision took hold and how quickly it changed the region, we turn to Mrs. Jane Guignard Curry, whose family witnessed those early transitions firsthand. Her story captures the personal side of progress, how vision, loss, and memory are always intertwined beneath the surface.
Were you living in Columbia during the time that the Lake Murray Dam was being built?
Yes, I was.
Were there exciting times going on with that? Can you tell us much about that?
Well, I can tell you that I know for a fact a great deal about the history of the Lake Murray Dam, which is not recorded accurately in sort of public chronicles of it. My uncle, Elliot Guignard, who ran the brickyard, he was the strongest possible believer in electric water power, that is, water power generated and run by electricity. And he had acquired land up just where the dam is because he saw that the bed of the river dropped off there about 25 feet, and he figured that it could produce water power, and so he gradually bought it up, both sides. And then, in order to develop this property, you had to get permits from the federal government, and in order to get that, you had to have a clearance from very reputable professionals in land development. And so he engaged a company in New York City called Murray and Flood. The partner of Mr. Murray was Mr. Flood. And he paid them to come down and make an assessment of this site, dam site. And they did have their approval of it, but it was also quite apparent that my uncle was in extremely poor health. He had a succession of heart attacks. And from our point of view, they waited until he was dying or already dead to get this property. Mr. Murray was a big engineer, civil engineer, who designed the bridge, and of course they
had the money, which my uncle did not have, to develop this site, and they quickly did develop it. And they then, of course, got the SCG people to take it over and run it, which they now do. And so it was named Lake Murray in honor of Mr. Murray. He used to stay at the Stello's house when he came in from New York to make all sorts of professional assessments of the site. And I remember Mr. Murray being a gigantic man. He was about 6'4" or 5", very imposing. And so we have Lake Murray. It was a long period when they had to buy up the land from the people who lived in that basin, which was going to be flooded. And they had to get all of those people moved out, and there were lots of graves in there. There was quite a controversy about the graves. Those who wanted the graves moved had to have their wishes respected. They had to, the company, the water power company, the Murray people, had to dig up very old graves to find a new place to put them. They didn't in every case dig up the grave, but it was an option that people had. So it took them quite a long time to get to actually building the dam. But it was built relatively quickly after they got all this clearance for it. Many acres, I don't know how many, but it's a big area. And the river used to flood every year in the springtime, and there was a period of great apprehension and anxiety about whether the bridge would hold.
The making of Lake Murray was a story of progress and sacrifice, of visionaries and workers, of promise and pain. When the dam was completed, the reservoir was named Lake Murray in honor of its chief engineer, William Spencer Murray, the man whose plans transformed the Saluda River Valley into one of the largest man-made lakes in the South. Beneath the surface rest the traces of communities once alive with farms, schools, and churches. Places like Drill Shoals, Lord's Ferry, Pine Ridge, Wessinger, Cantsville, and Selwood, to name a few. They were submerged in the name of progress, but for those who called them home, it meant watching their world disappear beneath the water. In our next episode, we'll look beneath the surface of Lake Murray, at the cemeteries, foundations, and memories still resting below the water. We'll be joined again by J.R. Fennell from Lexington County Museum to help connect memory to the landscape and to complete the Lake Murray Arch. We'll uncover the lake's unexpected ties to the military, including the planes that still rest in its depths. You've been listening to Made in Carolina, created, produced, and hosted by me, Lodi Terrell. New episodes of Made in Carolina drop every Thursday, so be sure to follow and tune in each week as we uncover more stories waiting beneath the Carolina landscape, North and South Carolina. Special thanks to J.R. Fennell and the Lexington County Museum in Lexington, South Carolina for sharing oral history recordings. archival audio courtesy of the University of South Carolina's Moving Image Research Collections, and oral history recordings from the Walker Local and Family History Center at Richland Library in South Carolina. Original music by Sister Sai. Additional sound effects were sourced from Free Sound. Full credits are listed in the show notes. Website managed by Tiffany Mather-Bass. To explore more stories, visit madeincarolina.podcast.com. That's madeincarolina.podcast.com. If you'd like to support the show, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Made in Carolina podcast. Every cup helps keep Carolina stories brewing. Thanks for joining me, and remember, the past is never really gone. Sometimes it's just waiting under the water to be uncovered.